Okay, I will call this meeting to order, the Polk County Board of Commissioners. Today is Wednesday, September 6th, and all commissioners are present. First on the agenda, are there any comments for items not on the agenda today? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. And do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Also move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Next up, we have a public hearing to consider legislative amendment 23-02 and text amendments to the Polk County zoning ordinance chapter 136, which pertains to the exclusive farm use zoning district. And I will open the hearing now to consider this. Are there any calls for abstentions or ex parte contact or conflicts of interest by the board? That last part?
Abstentions?
Oh, abstentions, ex parte contacts or conflicts. Usually we raise that to see if anybody has any they'd like to declare before we begin. That's right. I open up the floor to anybody who would like to speak to that, and sounds like nobody does. Okay. Okay. We're okay.
Regarding this, but it's not a discussion. So is that something?
There will be public comment. Yes, you bet. Okay. So seeing no conflicts or abstentions, we will now turn it over to county staff to present the background and summary.
Sure, thank you. Good morning. My name is Eric Knudsen. I am the Associate Planner for Polk County's Community Development Department. We're here today to discuss Planning File LA 2302, which is a legislative amendment proposal to update the text of Polk County zoning ordinance chapter 136, which pertains to the exclusive farm use zoning district.
Just click it for you. Just
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you. Okay. During this presentation, I will first provide some background information about the proposed text amendments. Next, I will discuss the optional text amendments that the Board of Commissioners may adopt and recommendations for each optional text amendment. We'll then discuss comments received from the public, and we'll go over the applicable review and decision criteria. And lastly, I'll discuss staff's and planning commission's final recommendation. Oregon Revised Statute 197-646 states that when new land use statutes, statewide land use planning goals, or rules implementing the statutes or the goals are enacted, counties must either adopt amendments to the local code to implement the changes to state law or apply those changes directly to land use applications. Currently, the Planning Division applies certain statutes directly to land use applications. Many of the proposed text amendments are required to be adopted by Polk County in order to be in conformance with state law, but are not substantive changes. Normally, the changes would be processed by staff as a ministerial action. However, staff has included these changes in this process in order to evaluate all proposed changes to Chapter 136. All proposed changes to Chapter 136 can be found in Attachment A of the memorandum and staff report, which was provided to the Board of Commissioners and is available on the Polk County website. A public hearing was held before the Polk County Planning Commission on July 18th, 2023. Where planning staff made a recommendation to the Planning Commission regarding the proposed text amendments. The Planning Commission concurred with staff on all proposed text amendments and recommended that the Board of Commissioners adopt staff's recommendation. Section 136050 pertains to uses that are subject to review and approval of a conditional use permit. These uses are primarily authorized by ORS 215-283 subsection 2 and OAR chapter 660 division 33. For some uses listed under section 136050, the current code language could be interpreted as being more restrictive than state law. For such uses, Polk County may continue to be more restrictive or may adopt the new language from state law verbatim. There are also some uses that the county does not currently permit, but are uses that are authorized by the state. For such uses, the county may adopt provisions for these new uses and may also choose to be more restrictive than state law. As discussed, changes to state law have resulted in the ordinance being more restrictive than state law for some uses. Staff and the Planning Commission recommended adopting those optional changes for the following permitted uses: home occupations, commercial dog kennels, mineral and aggregate operations, solid waste disposal sites, commercial power generating facilities, and private parks, playgrounds, hunting and fishing preserves, and campgrounds. In addition, there are some uses that are authorized by the state that are not currently permitted by Polk County in the EFU zone. Staff and the Planning Commission recommended adopting provisions for the following uses: equine therapeutic counseling activities and childcare facilities. Adopting these changes would provide parity with state law and would afford property owners a more inclusive list of uses that could be authorized in the EFU zone. Sorry. It's working for me now, sorry.
Is it working? Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So currently, temporary medical hardship dwellings are authorized to be established in the EFU zone within a manufactured dwelling, RV, or an existing building converted to residential use. State law indicates that a manufactured dwelling that was used for a temporary medical hardship dwelling should be removed or demolished within 3 months of the end of the hardship. Polk County currently allows manufactured dwellings to be removed by converting them to an improved non-residential use. This process is intended to limit the burdens placed on property owners. For this reason, staff and the Planning Commission recommended not adopting any additional language and having the current code language remain as is. In addition, Polk County does not currently allow but could permit aerial fireworks businesses. As discussed in the staff report, the state only authorizes aerial fireworks businesses that have been in operation since December 31st, 1986. Staff is unaware of any fireworks businesses that have existed since this date. For this reason, staff and the Planning Commission recommended not adopting this use. Polk County could also allow agritourism and other commercial events that are not in conjunction with a winery, cider business, or farm brewery. These laws trace back to Oregon Senate Bill 960 in 2011. Polk County has previously chosen not to adopt all the agritourism criteria for this bill due to concerns related to multi-year licenses and permits. For the reasons described in the staff report, staff recommends not adopting this use. Staff received 2 comments from the public prior to the Planning Commission public hearing. These comments were discussed by the Planning Commission in the July 18th hearing and were considered as part of their recommendation to the board. Staff also received 3 comments after the Planning Commission hearing, but prior to today's hearing. These comments requested that additional language be added to the text amendment for golf courses to clarify that frisbee golf, disc golf, and other similar golf courses are considered non-regulation golf courses, to clarify that these uses are not permitted under this code section. As discussed in the staff report, staff has no reason to believe that these uses would meet the definition of a regulation golf course as used in the statute. For this reason, staff believes the recommended language would be consistent with statute. Staff asks that the board makes a determination on this matter. Staff received 1 other comment after the staff report was published, but prior to today's hearing. This comment has been given to the board of commissioners. The applicable criteria for a legislative amendment is found in section 115.060, which requires demonstration that the proposed amendments are consistent with all state statutes, rules, and planning goals. Amendments must comply with ORS 197, which states that the local government shall amend their implementing ordinances to comply with new state laws. Amendments must comply with Polk County's comprehensive plans, policies, goals, and intent. Amendments must be in the public interest and for the general public benefit, and must comply with all applicable intergovernmental agreements. On August 30th, 2023, staff provided the Board of Commissioners a memorandum with findings demonstrating compliance with all these criteria. Notice of today's public hearing was published in the Itemizer Observer newspaper on August 16, 2023. All supporting documents were also made available on Polk County's Planning Division website. All applicable notice requirements for a legislative amendment process and public hearing listed under section 111.340, 111.350, and 111.370 were satisfied. So to recap, staff and the planning commission recommend that the board of commissioners adopt all mandatory changes to chapter 136 found in attachment A. Staff and the planning commission also recommend that the board of commissioners discuss optional changes listed in the staff report and attachment A and the proposed changes to golf courses requested by the public. For each of these optional changes, staff and the planning commission recommend that the board of commissioners determine whether the provision should be adopted, and if so, what the code language should be. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. That concludes the staff presentation. Next up will be public testimony. We'll start with those who are in favor of the recommended text changes, and then those who are opposed, and then we'll open it up to questions from the board, and then others who would like to ask questions of the board or staff. So with that, as stated, we did receive some comment prior to this hearing that is in the public record. Would anybody here like to address the board who's in favor of these text amendments? You can choose anyone or others. If you're in favor of one and opposed to another, you can speak twice. Please come forward.
It's just
If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record. Thanks.
Suzanne Brian Gans, Friends of Polk County.
Welcome.
I only have 2 copies. And I know you have it on.
We do have.
Oh, you do have
Oh, we
it.
have.
Okay,
Yeah,
everybody has it.
you bet.
Okay. Can I sit?
You bet.
See, Friends of Polk County is a local citizen group that seeks to promote wise management of farm and forest land, a high level of livability in our urban and rural communities, and a strong resource-based economy. Agriculture is a very important part of Polk County's economy. We are in favor of the proposed changes in EFU zoning that serve to promote and protect the county's agriculture viability and economy. We have some concerns about the extent of agritourism in the EFU zone. Some agriculture-related promotions like farm-to-table restaurants, bakeries, breweries, hotels, and event venues would be better located in rural towns. Towns have the necessary public services to support these facilities. Generally, farms do not. In addition, many roads in Polk County, including Highway 99W, are used by farm equipment during the summer. Farm-related use of roads in EFU zones should take high priority over use for public entertainment. We would like to stress the importance of evaluating the cumulative impacts that existing and proposed activities could have on area farm operations. The planning department states that compatibility with farming activity is evaluated as part of an administrative review or conditional use review of applications. We see 2 problems with this approach. First, administrative reviews do not provide notice to neighboring landowners and thus does not allow for input of those who would be most directly affected by the proposed activity. Second, it is not clear how the conditional use procedures will effectively prevent cumulative adverse effects of agritourism in a particular area. There's more on your paper there. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for being here. Hey, is there anybody else who'd like to speak in favor of any of the text amendments? Yes, sir. Please approach. Oh, okay. If you wouldn't mind, please signing in so we can follow up as needed. Welcome.
Good morning.
Mind again, please stating your name and address and then continue with your testimony.
Sure. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Chris Schmidt and I live up on Sunnyside Road. And I'm speaking about the suggestion to add the additional illustrative example under regulated or non-regulated golf courses on the Frisbee or disc golf courses. This is sort of a real life example. Up in our neck of the woods, we learned recently that there was interest in possibly putting in a Frisbee or a disc golf course. And I and several of my neighbors were concerned about that possibility. We learned concurrently with that this proceeding was going on, and we thought it might be an opportunity to suggest this additional change or additional example to your proposed amendment to 136. So again, I sent a comment in. I'm just reiterating this, today. I agree with the staff report that probably this is not, or that kind of activity would not be approved in any case under the existing proposed amendment. But since it came up in real life, and since it was in keeping with what the amendment was trying to do, we thought it might benefit from the additional example explicitly calling out that type of facility in order to provide clarity. And in case this were to come up somewhere else, it would be clear on its face that that's not the kind of activity that would be permitted there. It is in keeping with that, I think, however. So anyhow, I and my neighbors are suggesting that that you consider this, please, when you take up your decision on that.
Thank you, Chris.
And I'll just close this in. Thank you very much.
You. Would anybody else like to speak in favor? Going once, going twice. Okay, would anybody like to speak in opposition to any of the recommendations? Please.
Is this the only sign-in sheet for interested people?
I believe so, yeah.
Do you have to be presenting testimony in order to sign in, or can people just sign in as interested persons and not give testimony?
I believe I can sign in as interested parties, sure. If you are providing testimony, if you wouldn't mind stating your name.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
K. Jane Phillips.
Hey. Welcome.
I'm just signing in. First, I have a procedure. I raised the point about ex parte, and I saw no indication that you polled the commissioners. So there was no indication that any of them had a chance to say no ex parte. You just expected that it, so there's nothing on the record, yes or no, for those commissioners, correct?
Generally, they will offer that if they do have ex parte contact, they'd like to declare. And if they don't, then de facto, they did not. Yes.
So the answer to my question is no, there is nothing on the record that they indicated one way or the
No ex
other.
parte contact has been declared. That's right.
Okay, the other thing is kind of a Robert's Rule of Order or public testimony question. I was surprised in reading through the agenda for this meeting that testimony that I had submitted for the Planning Commission was edited, chopped, and evaluated. That had to do with the fact that, and in fact, in the edit of my testimony from the planning commission, there was no comment, no admission from the in that the staff report had not been published yet when you were requiring people to submit on July 7th, I believe, a testimony that would be presented with the packet to the Board of County Commissioners. So there's a requirement for specificity. And in your note here, it says, if you don't provide it so that the commissioners can respond, then you jeopardize not being able to appeal it to LUBA, which is a really strange claim that I haven't found yet anyplace. But the reason is that you are then treating testimony separate from what goes in with a packet, and the county planning commissioners can evaluate that versus something that's just handed in at the meeting and they go ahead and vote on recommendations. So you can't be specific on the matters if you don't have the staff report. And so you can't get that testimony into that packet with the background that's in the staff report. So in the future, my recommendation is to do like every other county, or at least where I've testified before, is you send in some prior comments. They would come in their entirety, whether it's an email or handwritten or whatever, they would be included. They wouldn't be edited. And in the edits, somebody made a judgment whether I understood certain points. Hearing testimony does not demand a judgment from the body that you're presenting it to, as far as I'm concerned. First of all, because of the extent, I think there's over 79 pages in this proposed change. I would like right now to request that the record be held open for 7 days. This is a busy time for farmers, planting, getting their crops in. And to appear here at 9 o'clock in the morning on a work day, it doesn't leave people much time to evaluate the 79 pages. I mean, you need to support the farmers in Polk County, and an early morning hearing like this kind of straps them a little bit to appear in person. The other thing is there seems to be a mix of I mean, it was hard for me to discern what items were actually being changed to match the state's rules, and which were being more restrictive. And so that, I think that whole, that needs to be, there needs to be more time to consider that for comments to come. So I know you guys want to just jump on a decision, or maybe make some decisions by consent. I just don't think that that's proper at this point in time. So I'm requesting the 7-day, hold the record open. And as far as Friends of Polk County, having family that's farmed here since 1847, it's imperative that everybody speaks their mind. And so Friends of Polk County can do a lot of good, but they don't speak for all of us, and they don't speak for me as far as ag tourism. I'm on a road that's being prevented. People are working to prevent me from being a competition to other vineyards and wineries in the area. And so it's more helpful if we're treated equally with equal justice. And so I really admire them for speaking out today, but they don't speak for everybody, and they don't speak for me. Thank you very much.
Ms. Phillips?
Any questions?
For me, thank you. We will open it up to questions to staff in a moment if you have any. Okay, would anybody else like to speak, please? Welcome.
Hi. My name is Penny Cox. Live at 11140 Orrs Corner Road, Rook Creole, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the Polk County Farm Bureau. We also would like to be able to have the record left open at least 7 days. There's several issues here. The farmers are really busy, and Don Schellenberg and I have been working on the solar farming issue because the legislative part of the Oregon Farm Bureau has asked for more specific resolutions so that they have more teeth to be able to go back to legislature and to lobby. So that's one of the issues that we'd like to be able to have a little bit of time. He's really busy right now helping the farmers. So if I had a little bit of time, maybe he and I could put some testimony in about how the Farm Bureau feels about the continuing farms that are having more than minimum acreage put into solar panels. They're getting very creative with it, trying to get into the farming definition by having the solar panels higher, and you can have sheep and crops underneath the panels. But it's becoming a real big concern across Oregon. The other is that our committees are rather divided in half about kennels, dog kennels definitions. We need to have a little bit more time to be able to flesh out a little bit of language that we'd like to present about kennels also, and maybe try to get some consensus in the next, however, if you allow the record to be left open in the amount of time. There's a few other issues too, but those are probably the two biggest ones that we see with this that we'd like to be able to get a little testimony in. So if the record could be left open, I'll try to get a few of the board to help us put together. We have a land use, statewide land use meeting on October 9th, but that's a little bit long to ask for the record left open. So that's all.
Thank you, Penny.
Mhm.
And just a little point of clarity on the staff report. This was mentioned before. We'll think about ways to make this more explicit, but the recommendations that are optional are said that they're optional. If they're mandatory by state statute, they're kind of differentiated that way. Just for folks who are listening, who might want to look into this as well. Just wanted to mention that.
I think we would like the county to be absolutely as strict as possible on the solar farming issue too, because that's getting creative, but anyways.
Appreciate that.
Mhm.
Anybody else like to address the board at this time? Okay, we'll now open it up to questions from the board if there are any questions to staff.
My question to the team is, and just because I haven't asked this before in nearly 13 years I've been doing this, and we haven't done much of this, so I'm grateful for that. When we have something that's mandatory, that equals to me that the state says it's mandatory. And so always with that challenge to me, when the state says this is a mandatory thing, or the state's making legislative acts that we find are mandatory, what are the enforcement and support services aids that come with that? So there's costs associated with these things. Thank you. That was the one thing I was looking for on the record. So it causes me to have challenges with making things so permissive that we can't keep up. So I do support trying to make certain that we control some of this in a way that, you know, that doesn't just let people run unchecked with some of these challenges. So Additionally, I would like to say, for my position, I like the amendment suggested for the disc golf portion. And I mean, it was something that jumped out at me as I read through the record and looked at the recommendations. So I like that, and I appreciate that citizens are involved in this. And again, I realize that you have some local impact happening. So, but I appreciate that that's in there. It makes sense to me.
Thank you.
I was just going to stay in line. I love the approach you took, describing what a golf course is, not what it could be, and eliminating all of the other subsets of that. The golf course is a golf course, not a discourse. So, but I love the thought and the forethought you guys put into this with your recommendations. They'll make good common sense.
Any other questions? I don't believe I have any. Kudos to staff for a very thorough report and kind of delineation about what is mandatory and what is optional. I appreciate the more detail on what that means when something is mandatory, and appreciate the extra burden that places on staff. So are there any questions that anybody present would like to ask staff at this time? Clarifying questions on the memo, things like that? Okay. Before we consider a decision, we were asked to keep the hearing open for 7 days. Just curious what the board thinks about that. Are there any objections to that?
I have no objections to 7 days, but I actually agree with Penny Cox and others that have stated that the ag community, this is again, a very busy time. A lot of this affects the ag community, and I would like the record left open for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would second that as well.
All right, I think by consensus, we'll keep the record open for 14 days from today. I agree. There's a lot in this memo, and it took me quite a bit of time to digest it and get my questions answered. So I appreciate that recommendation. Okay, so seeing that we're keeping the record open, we'll pause the decision, I assume, for 14 days as well. And we'll go from there.
You're gonna close the hearing, you're gonna leave the record open for 14 days. So the last day to submit any kind of testimony will be September 20th by 5 p.m.
Second floor in the community development department. So make sure that your testimony is submitted to the community development department on the second floor by 5 p.m. on September the 20th.
September 20th by 5 p.m. Okay, so we'll keep the record open until then. Unless there are objections, we'll close the public hearing today. Okay. All right, that concludes regular business for today. Are there any issues we need to discuss in executive session?
None for me, sir.
All right, thank you everybody for being here, and we'll adjourn at 9:33.